The 2000 Texas Spring Weekend for NASCAR is mostly remembered for Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s first career Cup Series win, but the controversy that took place the night before gets lost in NASCAR history. After going over this story, you may have a newfound appreciation for NASCAR's current television partners, because what both CBS and TNN did left not only fans in an uproar, but also the higher-ups of NASCAR very concerned. This is when NASCAR's TV partners didn't care. April Fool's Day 2000, the 7th race of the NASCAR Busch Series season, is about to take place at Texas Motor Speedway. The late Jason Leffler and Hall of Famer Mark Martin made up the front row, but it seemed like they were going to be that way for a while. In yet another race this early in the season, weather was going to be a major factor. The 2000 season had quite a few rain delays already in both the Cup and Busch Series. It wasn't looking like they were going to get any sort of racing in for a while, but then all of a sudden a slight window opened up. Fortunately, there wasn't too much of a delay and they were able to get the race started just in time in front of a packed crowd. The real question was, how far could they get this race in? And according to the forecast, it wasn't going to be very long. Less than 20 laps of racing, as a matter of fact.
Welcome back to Texas. 16 laps complete. There have been a few sprinkles, and now the yellow flag is coming out for the first time this afternoon, and it's 4 raindrops. Well, what started out as a light sprinkle has turned into the full wash cycle.
It is going to be a little while before we see any weather conditions that's going to allow us to dry the racetrack off and get back to racing, and there's lightning and thunder in the area as well.
They were going to be under a weather delay for a while. Some of the highlights from this coverage include Jeffrey Bodine's miraculous return from his near-fatal crash at Daytona and interviewing Adam Petty before his Cup Series debut. Usually this would be a typical weather-delayed race. They would continue their rain delay coverage and just wait the weather out and eventually get the racing in. The problem for CBS is, in this instance, it wasn't, because of what was taking place after the race.
So we're still hopeful of racing here in Texas, but coming up, CBS Sports presents the biggest day in college basketball, the NCAA Men's Final Four.
The 2000 NCAA's March Madness Final Four was going to start after the Busch Series race. All 4 teams were set to play that evening, so there was no way that CBS was going to air the finish of this race. Thankfully, another NASCAR TV partner was going to come in clutch, TNN. Wait a minute, how did this all work with NASCAR's television partners at the time? As crazy as this is going to sound, this was true. Back in those days, the tracks negotiated television rights, not NASCAR themselves. So if you've always wondered why NASCAR races were scattered on different television channels each week back in those days, that's the reason. By the year 2000, all of that was coming to an end because NASCAR had just signed an exclusive television deal with Fox Sports, NBC, and Turner Broadcasting. 2000 marked a lame duck season for NASCAR's television partners. So not only are CBS and TNN related in that way, but also TNN was owned by CBS Satellite Communications at the time. So in the event that CBS or TNN couldn't air the finishing of a race or one entirely, one would come in clutch for the other. The best example of this was the 1998 Pepsi 400 that had to be rescheduled from its July 4th date due to the 1998 Florida wildfires. Since it was rescheduled for the middle of October, CBS would be unable to air it because they were in the middle of football season. Thankfully, TNN came in clutch and was able to broadcast the race in its entirety. So it became pretty clear that coverage was going to resume on TNN later that evening. Even Mike Joy makes an announcement before going off the air.
Here at Texas Motor Speedway, track drying efforts continue. It's going to be a while before they go racing, so CBS Sports is going on to Indianapolis and the Final Four. When this race starts later today, not now, but when the race starts, you will see it live on TNN. This is, of course, weather permitting. TNN continues with regular programming, but when the race runs, you'll see it live on TNN cable. Coming up next, the Final Four show, followed by Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Florida, North Carolina. This has been a presentation of CBS Sports.
After signing off the air at 4 p.m. local time, fans were anxiously waiting for the race to resume on TNN. But while the weather is beginning to clear up and the track is being dried, it has taken over 4 hours to do so. Because the rain delay lasted more than 4 hours, CBS would make a shocking decision. They decided to scrap their original plans entirely, meaning that not only was the race not going to be broadcasted live, they weren't even going to tape delay it, meaning that any type of broadcast footage of this race that took place after going off the air on CBS does not exist. Instead of picking up the race, TNN decided to show cartoons, even though there were demands and pleas from NASCAR officials begging them to air it. The decision provoked considerable controversy in the NASCAR garage and concern among some Winston Cup team owners, worried about how disinterested that season's lame duck broadcasters were. What made this decision even worse was not only the fact that they chose not to even tape the race for later broadcasts, but the other NASCAR television partner at the time, ESPN and ABC, had a very similar rain delay in the same series a month prior at Atlanta. The race started on ABC and finished later that evening on ESPN2. To my knowledge, the 2000 Albertsons 300 is the last NASCAR race out of the top 3 series not to have the finish taped. Even for 2000 standards, that's still pretty bad. Not only were fans deprived of watching the rest of the race, but they missed one of the biggest accidents in the Speedway's history. Mark Martin ended up beating Matt Kenseth by less than a second, but earlier in the race, there was an 8-car pileup. Mike Dillon and Adam Petty spun coming off of turn 2 and collected 6 cars. Dillon's car caught fire immediately and he scrambled out of it. NASCAR fans continue to criticize today's television partners, and while it is totally fair to do so, you have to be grateful for these 2 things. The first being the way NASCAR handles its television deals, handling it themselves instead of letting the tracks do it, and the final one being how Fox and NBC handled delayed races. Even though you're not going to like a race being moved over to FS2 or CNBC of all places, at least they're still willing to cover the race no matter where or when it is, and not choosing to abandon it entirely like both CBS and TNN did in 2000. And once again, that'll do it for another video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Black Flags Matter. Catch you next time.